Hello, I'm Steve Nave with the Actors Showcase, and sitting next to me is one of my all-time favorite character actors, Mr. Richard Herd. Richard's been in films like The China Syndrome. You might have seen him on Seinfeld playing a great character. He's worked in so many films and TV shows, you're going to say, I know that guy, and you probably know his work. Richard, welcome to the show.
Well, I want to wish you every success on your new adventure, Steve. You know,
Thank you,
it's a
Richard.
honor. Thanks for having me on the show. We were talking a little earlier. What about all those starving actors out there and how they get started, what they have to do?
Yes.
Well, I think the first thing they have to be is totally obsessed, and they have to push everything else aside. Be blind and just move right ahead and get as much experience as they can. Community theater, singing in a chorale, taking drum lessons, but nothing like experience. Go to school, find a good teacher. I started out as a kid, I started in the 8th grade out in Brockton, Mass, and then we moved into Boston, and I was a musician, and from that I got a small part in a musical, and then from that I auditioned for Lee Falk and Al Capp, you know, the two cartoonists.
Sure.
They had a summer theater, the Boston Summer Theater.
John Lennon's good friend, Al Capp.
Well, really?
No.
No.
They had
See,
fight.
you would know that. You would, you know,
me
you're a
and
little
John-
older than me,
Yeah,
Steve.
well,
You
that's
see,
true.
you would know those
Me
things.
and John were
Much
like
more
this.
educated, yes. You've got those graduate looks about you. And I had to do a monologue, which I did, and I got an apprenticeship at the Boston Summer Theater. And that's the thing that young folks don't have now. I had to clean up the bathroom, I had to paint the sets, and then you took the classes, you took the fencing classes, you took the acting classes, how to speak classes. And your first season, it was like a summer stock, 3 or 4 months. The first season you had no speaking parts. You played background, blah, 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 blah. But every day you had a class. The second year I was there, which was between my sophomore and junior year at Boston English High. The second year I was there, they moved me up. I got like one word, one line. So when I finished my second year, when I got out of high school, I already had my equity card. I had my union card. But it was different then too, because you were a junior member. And when you moved into your first year of equity, you had to continue with the classes. You did not become a principal member of equity for 2 or 3 years. And they did employ people at the summer stock theaters because they employed a lot of apprentices before they became equity. And there were classes going on, you were being stimulated, there were people telling you like you have to have an opinion, you have to be obsessed. And it is true, you cannot survive like in any other business.
Were you obsessed? Did you
I was.
Uh-huh.
I was very obsessed. Well, I was more than that. It thrilled me. I loved it. I was lucky enough to have good teachers. I started with very small parts. And as I moved along, and the same in film, I started very low, television. So I accumulated an education of what to do, what to say, how to do, and then I watched a lot. I was just a poor guy living on the east side, down on 10th Street in Alphabet City, paying $19 a month rent. I didn't have any money.
That expensive, huh?
Yeah, that expensive. Car fare was $15. I was an usher at Carnegie Hall at night, making $4 or $5. I was studying with Strasberg and Bobby Lewis, all of these people, and he gave me a half scholarship.
Strasberg?
No, not Strasberg. He wouldn't give you a nickel.
I was going to say.
Burton, Philip.
Oh, we're back to Burton.
Back to
Yes,
Burton.
yeah.
Well, that was, the point is, these guys knew what they were talking about. And you didn't last in that class unless you were dedicated, disciplined. But the main thing, you didn't need any of those things. You didn't know what it was. You were on fire. You know, when you're doing something, the heat of doing it, just being allowed to do it. You have to dedicate your time, total time. There are no easy ways. Most actors today, young people, they want results too quickly.
Right.
They're result oriented. They don't want to do the work. It's like painting. You just can't, pick up a brush and paint something.
Now that you bring up painting.
Well, I don't mean to distract
No, I'm
you.
glad you did because, you do beautiful work. Is that something you're just as obsessed about as...
Well, my painting, it's something that I do from my mind. It's not a photograph, it's not this. And this here is, when it started, it was the beginning of the horse. It's called Cheyenne Sunset. And it was the beginning, wall paintings, and as they progressed, they turned more into the formal look of the horse. But I was really interested in here in the the balance of color, which is
Beautiful.
actually,
Very beautiful.
it's the same with acting,
Right.
light and shadow.
So Richard, what is the true key to acting? If you had to give one piece of advice, what would that be?
Listening. Well, like Jimmy Cagney said, you know, listening, don't bump into the furniture, and know your lines. Knowing your lines is the least of it. That's just, you know, that's nothing. That's like drinking water. Now, you were talking, we had a little break, and you were talking about how you started out. You were a kid,
Right.
you got fascinated, you went out and you took class, you went to school, you did some plays.
Right. Studied with a lot of good coaches and
Yeah.
working actors that know what it's like to be on a set.
Yeah, and you were, you know, we were fortunate. I'm a little older than you, but we were fortunate too because the people around at that time, there was a different quality in film and theater. And a lot of that was there because a lot of those people that were under contract studied.
Right.
Part of the deal in the contract, or part of the deal at a good theatrical school or a college or university, it's called studying.
That's right.
You know, you work on a scene, you break it down, you work in the gymnasium a bit, and you have the big thing beyond listening is enormous passion. You have to have enormous passion. You have to feel as though if you don't do this, your life is over. But you can't expect those things unless you study. A friend of mine did a play down in North Carolina years ago, and the people that wanted to be part of the play, it was one of those the letter of agreement things, he was an equity member, they came from 50, 75 miles, not only to rehearse, but they had 5 or 6 shows a week, but they came 50, 75 miles to be part of the show.
Right.
Each one of them in North Carolina or Fargo, they all had found somebody to study with. You know, it's not impossible. But like anything else, if you want to achieve any kind of workability, if you want to become a working person within any like corporation or whatever you want, a geology, or like our wonderful hostess here who brought somebody up and found water for all of us in this wonderful setting we're in here. Thank you very much.
Yes.
All it takes is the harder you work, the luckier you get.
That's right.
But and not I always felt that there was always a job out there for me.
What was your first big break as an actor, particularly in television or film?
My first well, All the President's Men. I had done worked with Quintero and Isabel Halliburton. The part had already been cast, but I didn't know it at the time. And I got this call like on a Wednesday about James McCord. You know, I was there doing theater. I was doing a few bits in films, things of that sort. And I was happy. I was doing off-Broadway, occasionally a commercial, paying the rent, the mortgage, finally got a little house, putting my 3 kids through school, et cetera, et cetera. And she said, you may be in All the President's Men. Now, I had never met with Redford or any of those people. And she says, what are you doing for the next month? I said, well, I'm not doing anything really, you know. She said, well, you may come down to Washington tomorrow. So she called back later. She said, you got the job. So I got on the plane, I went down, and what that gave me, not as though it was a huge role, but I was fortunate to be amongst such great people, it gave my agent cachet to get me in to see people. It got my first good piece of Hollywood film. My agent had something to talk about. I ended up doing a pilot because of that with Nick Mancuso and Christine Lottie. It never went anywhere, from Steve Cannell. And then Steve started using me again. And then out of this whole thing, I was coming back to New York to do Clifford Odets' The Big Knife with Tony Musante. And then I got a call to come in to do a pilot, which I didn't want to do. I resisted it. It was like a 2-scene thing called T.J. Hooker. I wanted to play T.J. Hooker.
That's right.
Screw this other
Forget it,
stuff.
Shatner.
I said, no. Finally, I got it. You know, it wasn't going to come back. They got rid of 6 people, and they said they want you to come in and out being the boss. I got a 3-year job out of that.
So Richard, we both remember when our agents, when I started,
Sure.
their agent came with a book,
Yep.
and they'd go to Universal Studios or wherever the casting directors were on the lot,
Yeah.
and they'd bring the book and they'd show the pictures
That's
of
right.
the people, Phil Benjamin.
Oh,
Phil
God,
for,
yeah.
What was that?
Buck Rogers.
Milt
and stuff.
Hammerman,
Yeah, all those guys.
Reuben Cannon, you know,
Yeah.
even the later guys. But those guys were.
But
out
then
there.
but it went from there. Then it went to the breakdowns.
Yeah.
And now you're a little tiny picture on,
Yeah.
on a computer.
Yeah, electronic thing.
And you know, in some ways it's efficient, but you've lost
No.
that personal touch.
No, what I remember when I would, first of all, if you audition in the theater, eventually, if you get enough callbacks, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, everybody's out in the audience. They're there, and you're on the stage.
Right.
And I remember when I would go into audition, like for a television show or a film, there was no tape. There was no tape. And the principals, the people that had to make the decision, were right there in the room,
Real live people.
like here.
But these
And
aren't real life people.
whatever. And you and I would do the scene. And sometimes you'd get the job as you went out the door.
That's right.
And sometimes they'd say, hey, Steve, you know, it was great, but you're not right for this.
Right.
We're going to catch you the next time.
I heard that a lot of times.
Yeah, but they
They're
eventually...
still telling me that all the time.
You lucked out on this, though, didn't you? But there was none of this stuff in between you and the people that would make the difference in casting you and putting it together.
Right.
And I always tell actors, you know, they go in like to do an audition. I said, what are you doing? I said, you're doing them a favor. You're doing them a favor.
That's right.
Because they want to solve the casting problem.
That's right.
When you walk into a room like that, your whole life can change in 3 minutes.
That's right.
Because remember, you used to have to go, what was it? You go in for the audition, then you go boom, and then you go for the network audition. Now, when you just go to the network audition, I remember the very first one I did for a series, there were like 40 people in the room.
Felt like theater again.
Oh, yeah, like theater. And we had to do a scene, and that's the way it was for everybody.
Right.
So people have to learn to point their whole day. It's not like work, you always have to be on simmer for film work, and you have to be perfect. And when you have to point your whole day for like 3 or 4 minutes in an office, and that's it, no second chance.
That's right.
You better be ready for that 3 or 4 minutes. And they have to remember from audition to audition to audition who they were, what they were doing. You know, you can wear the same tie or whatever you want, but unless you know, why did they call you back?
Exactly.
And why did they call you back for the 3rd time? Why are they putting you on tape or film? And, you know, you got to make some notes. I do note. I start. Also, you got to build an outside life for the character.
I was going to ask you, how do you start? You get a part. One of the first times I saw you, I think, was China Syndrome.
Yeah.
And I remembered you so vividly.
Well-
When you get a part like that, or any part,
I couldn't get an audition for that.
is that
I
right?
couldn't get an audition for it. I wanted to be. I knew about that, and I tried to get an audition. And I was on my way. I went down to Mexico to do a picture with Rod Steiger. I was down there doing this picture, and I came back. And then my agent, God bless you, Mary Ellen White, you really looked out
Mary
for
Ellen
me.
White,
She used to take me by the hand to meet the casting people.
Well, I took you by the hand to have you sit right here.
That's your
That's the story.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
And I got this call, like in the middle of the day, blah, 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 get over to Gower Gulch, boom, 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 boom. The actor they want for this is holding them up for money, and I used to work for cheap. So,
Was that used to? Did I
yeah,
hear the word
well,
used
it's
to?
getting, you know, you start out low, you go high with the bucks, and you end up doing the parts in the indies, which is fine for me. Whatever the hell happened.
Great priest, by the way. You played
Thank
a
you.
great priest
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Confessions of a Pit
Yeah.
Fighter. We worked together.
Yes,
on
we
that.
did. I had a good, with John, I had worked with John Savage and Onion Field, Alman Asani, I did
Alman
Private
Asani,
Benjamin
yeah.
with him.
Great cast.
But anyway, I went over there, and the place was loaded with actors. They were hiding in corners, and they were doing this and reading their script. I went in there, talk about walking into a room. Jim Bridges, Michael Douglas, Jack Lemmon, Jane Fonda,
Any big names? Or
all
just
the
those people?
producers are in this room. And I went in and I did my little tap dance,
Mm-hmm.
and I left. And at that time, I wasn't really living here. I was at the Magic Hotel. I was living up at the Magic Hotel when I come out to LA to do a party.
Franklin there?
On Franklin, next to the
By the
Magic,
Magic
next
Castle?
to the Trick Palace, we used to
Yeah.
call it. Next to the Magic Castle. But there's a Ralph's around there. And I went in to buy a few things, breakfast or whatever. And I had a lucky phone at the Ranch Market, and I had a lucky phone at Ralph's Market. That's when
you
they
mean a payphone?
A payphone,
Wow.
man.
No, I remember those.
Yeah,
Those
so I
were-
went up there and I put my money in, and I called the servicer. It says, "Call your agent. Call your agent." I got the part.
Because, why did you get the part?
I got the part because I did a good audition.
Okay.
I got the part is because I had I was focused.
Right.
But I'm going to tell you another thing. I walked into there and I saw 6 other actors I would have cast like that.
Really?
And
so an actor should never be thinking casting
No.
when they go into audition.
Don't think casting, and don't pay any attention to the lyrics. You know, like he's a big guy with a beard and this and that, or he has a very high voice or a very low voice. Just, if you get a feel for the character after you've worked on it, you've got to really know who you are. And when you walk into the room, you can't be totally the character, but you've got to be some piece of the character. Then you do it, and the other advice is get your butt out of there.
Don't
Because
hang around.
you've dropped something in there. You've left an aura. Get out.
Right.
You know, don't start, once
Keep-
you hit them
keep
with
liking you before
keep
you
them
go.
liking you or hating you,
Yeah.
or whatever it is that stimulated them to make a call and get you a job. And there was a great, I'm trying to remember, she was so good. Oh God, the casting person on that one, I can't remember her name now, but she was just fabulous. There were some wonderful people out there, Steve, that really want to help people, but there are so many people now, you know, in the business that it's a crapshoot for them. And you can't even get a job when we start out like a bartender or a waiter or this, or parking vehicle or cars or whatever, because everybody's taking them.
So you think it's a lot more competitive now?
So it's not, there are fewer jobs.
Fewer, well, no, okay.
And it's more competitive because especially in Hollywood, all of the beauty from all over the world comes out here. A lot of people are taken advantage of. Now, you know, I go take a class once in a while yet. I'll do a play once in a while. I do it for myself. You know, I have no expectation. I do it. But it's training. After a while, you get a glibness. You get dull. You don't have an edge. And, you know, a lot of actors now, they do too much film work and they act from the head, the chest up. You've seen that.
Sure.
And the body is
like
not,
that a lot. It's very
the
tight.
body is not related to the head.
Right.
You know, so when you pull back from acid, you know, and what that does too is they whisper, and it collapses.
Yeah.
There's the energy source, the diaphragm, and not that you have to go like that,
Right.
but you can whisper with energy.
Right.
And I was saying, what the hell are they saying? I can't hear it.
Did you study voice as well?
Yes, I sang with a couple of bands,
that's singing.
did a
Did
bunch
you-
of
how
musical
about speech?
without microphones. Oh yes, had to study that.
Who did you study with, just out of curiosity?
Oh God, I studied with Joe Bassard. I studied in New York with John Cullum's teachers, Menzies, and I studied out here too. Oh, what's his name? I can't remember. But so many people, so many. Tom Shell,
Richard.
and I've sung, you know, with bands. I sang with the Ray Anthony Band. I did a couple of numbers with them.
Well, one thing I noticed about you when you played that, because you're such a likable guy, and you came in as the priest, and I never saw priests so scary. I mean, you had something from within that came out, and I was like, everybody looked at each other and they said, that's the guy. Just a quick question on this.
Let me tell you why I did that.
Okay, you were angry at me?
No,
and
no,
you
no,
were-
no.
Oh, okay,
I was
you were-
brought up in the south end of Boston, and that was a acey-deucey neighborhood.
Oh,
So I figured, well, that's when they'd beat you up. They wouldn't kill you.
yeah.
You take a beating once.
Smart fun to beat you up a couple
Yeah,
of times.
yeah.
and stuff.
But you know, everybody goes through. That's the way. No big deal. But when I figured these are the kind of people I'm going to be around. The kind of people that come into my church are troubled. They belong to gangs. They've been in prison. And everybody gets this thing about, you know. Do you remember Don Murray in a thing called Hoodlum Priest?
I remember the
Yeah, it's
time.
an old, yeah. But the point is, you know, you have to figure out where did this priest come from? Where is he? Where is his church? What are his problems? Does he not get along with the parish? Does he not get along with the Monsignor? Is he a singular guy?
Right. The only other priest I can think of that, off the top of my head, was Carl Malden.
That's right.
You
You got
the
it.
Waterfront.
That's right.
That's
Well, you
right.
got it. You
Yeah.
see that? That's
Yeah.
exactly the way it was.
Yeah.
Now that guy was from the streets.
That's
He
exactly
was a
it.
street kid, and he was a man.
Right.
Street, not them. Well, I mean, I'm not
Right.
saying that they're not, but
Right,
I can't tell you. I've known so many priests that are regular guys.
Right.
Blah 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 blah. I mean,
Well,
they get out
how do you
sports.
approach that? Just very briefly. I mean, you got a part. You've been hired to play a part. What's the first thing you do, and then what's the second and the third thing? in
First thing I do
preparation?
is I read the whole play a couple of times, or the whole film a couple of times, the script, if I can get it. Sometimes they give you bits and pieces. It's very difficult today to get a script to read. You're going and reading a few pages of this, few pages of that, and you don't know what the hell it's all about. And you have to ask them about that. Do you have any questions? And you say, yeah, you know, I got some questions. I did a terrible, well, I won't go there. I had a terrible experience where I told them all It never happened to me, but I got the job anyway.
Well,
But the thing
that's the important thing.
I really, really think about it. Then I put the script aside. I think about the character. Who is he? Where is he? What's going on? What's the situation? You know, what's happening around him at that particular time? I think of all that. Then I try to paraphrase it. I paraphrase it. Then I have to hear the other voices because I want to hear what they're saying. To, whatever they say to me will create a response from me. Then I have to know who they are, what background they came from. You know, it's an endless thing, but after a while, a lot of those people, you see, it's never the same. And every time in this business, it's like painting. You have to start with a blank canvas. And with acting, there are no shortcuts. There's experience, and there's a certain amount of confidence, but also you have to maintain a fear. If you don't have any fear, I think you're in trouble.
Don't be too relaxed.
No, well, not too relaxed.
Yeah,
I remember I was working with Patrick McGowan. I was working with Patrick
Wonderful
McGowan.
actor.
Oh yeah, I was a big fan of his. And we were doing something, and just before we went on, he said to me, "How you feeling tonight, Richard? How you feeling?" I said, I feel fear, I'm afraid. He says, "So do I, let's go." And so you walked out, and it was wonderful.
Yeah.
The point is, once you get on there, you're okay.
Right.
And I remember Milton Katselas had a thing, you know, about that's why we pay actors all the big bucks, because they can control their fear. But you got to find out a way. You have to find a way to use your fear. You don't want to push it out of the way. It's an important.
Fight or run, right?
Yeah, you've got to use that
Fight or
fear.
run.
Yeah.
Adrenaline.
Yeah.
Richard, you have been an incredible guest.
Wow. Didn't mean to talk your ear
No,
off, but I got a
notes.
big blabber here.
You are fantastic. We'll have to have you back again.
All right.
But your experience and your talent
Well,
and,
thank
and
you.
wealth
And-
of information
yeah.
to our guests out
Yeah.
there, we're just very happy to have you.
Well, thank you, and every success with the show, and you have a grand crew here.
This is Steve Nave with the Actors Showcase. I want to thank our special guest, Mr. Richard Hurd, a consummate actor and a great teacher. Richard, continued success, and we'll see you on our next episode.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, and every success on your new show.
Thank you, Richard.
My pleasure.
We'll see you next time.